Hola, Kipsters! Are you all ready to go to the fiesta with me? I'm super excited. I decorated for the occasion. I hope you're excited. Because where we left off yesterday with our Adelita story, she had just finished getting ready with the help of Esperanza to go to the fiesta where her sisters were. And I can't wait to see what happens. But before we jump in, we do have to go over our answers from yesterday's question, and then we'll finish the story to see what happens. See you there. Vámonos! So we left off yesterday with Adelita and our thinking jobs, which were who is the story about and what happens in the story. And we also had that bonus question of what elements are the same in Adelita and Cinderella. We're going to talk a lot more about that for today's lesson, but let's get into our answers. So number one, what does this page show about Adelita? And if you remember, you can see Adelita in the middle and kind of tell from her face how she's feeling. And the other pictures on the side, you can see her stepsisters, and that's Esperanza, who was forced to leave in the background. So what does this page show us about Adelita? Here are our answer choices. She definitely doesn't look too happy in this picture. And I don't think there was any part where she really wanted to show off for her stepsisters. And I know she spent a lot of time in the kitchen, so I don't think it's because she didn't know how to cook. It's definitely because Adelita does not like cooking without Esperanza. And you can see from her face that she's not happy with what she's doing. How'd you do there? Way to go, you. On to number two. How can you describe Adelita on this page? Again, looking at her face and body language, you have a pretty good idea of how she's feeling. If I go back to the text, there's even a part that says she missed her father, she missed Esperanza, she missed being at the fiesta. So A, she is sad and disappointed to miss the fiesta. Put yourself in the back if you got that one. Last one. So our thinking job questions of who is the story about and what happens in the story. So you can start. The story is about, of course, our main character, Adelita. And you should have also included her stepsisters and Esperanza, some of the other main characters. I also forgot about the stepmother, so you could have added her in also. Now, what happens in the story? Some of the big things that happen in the beginning is that Adelita becomes an orphan, and Doña Micaela and her stepsisters are mean to her. So as long as you had something about Adelita and Doña Micaela and her stepsisters, then you have the answer. Then Esperanza helps Adelita get ready for the fiesta. So again, as long as you have something about Esperanza and something about the fiesta, you did great work. Awesome job. Now for that bonus question, what elements are the same in Adelita and Cinderella? That's really going to be our focus today. And to do that, we're going to use our story elements chart to help us. Who remembers what all these letters stand for? C is for the characters, yep. S is for the, don't leave me hanging. P is for the, and S is for the, and LL, this one's a little bit new, but we have talked about it, is for the lesson learned. Now, which elements do you think are the same between Adelita and the first Cinderella story that we read earlier this week? Are some of the characters the same? It might not seem like it, but in both stories, there is a Cinderella character. In the first story, her name was Cinderella. And in our story today, this week, her name is Adelita. So keep that in mind. There are still characters there are other characters also that are the same. Now, the setting doesn't seem like it's the same. Remember, earlier this week, we were all the way in France. Now we're here in Mexico. But there is a part of the setting that happens in both stories. There's a big event that's happening. So keep that in your mind to find the connection there. There's definitely similar problems in the story. We're going to talk more about the list of problems that we've had so far. The solution is very similar, and the lesson that we can learn from these stories are also the same. So really, all of these story elements can be found in both stories. So really looking to see who has their thinking getting ready for second grade for today's lesson. So what problems have we seen so far in the story? Let's go through them. Adelita's mother died. Then her father died, so Adelita is an orphan. And Adelita's new stepmother and stepsisters are very mean to her. That makes me think about Cinderella and how her family treated her in the other book. Esperanza was forced to leave the house. Adelita had to do all of the chores in the house. She wasn't allowed to go to Javier's fiesta. And Adelita has nothing nice to wear to Javier's fiesta also. So a lot of problems that are similar to the Cinderella story that we read earlier this week. Again, we're going to use our story elements to figure out the connections and what's the same in Adelita and the Cinderella story that we read earlier this week. Hope you guys are ready. We're going to come back to this at the end, but let's get back into the story. The fiesta had already begun when Adelita arrived. She walked into the room. Everyone turned to look. The room fell silent. Who was this stunning young woman? Señor Godillo went up to Adelita. Who do we have here? He asked. I'm in disguise, Adelita said with a twinkle and a sweet smile. Just call me Cenicienta, Cinderella. Javier, everyone, Señor Godillo said. Come meet our very own Cenicienta. Javier took one look and fell in love. He danced every dance with Adelita. He brought her refreshments. He never left her side. Adelita's heart was full as well, and all the meanness she had suffered over the years began to melt. But at midnight, when Javier gave her a sweet kiss and declared his love, Adelita was frightened. How could she explain who she was? His family would never allow him to love a kitchen maid. So Adelita ran away and found Esperanza. They hurried home. Wait, so why did Adelita run away? Think about what she just said on the page before. She was frightened and she didn't think that Javier's family would ever let him marry someone like her when she was just a kitchen maid. So sad. I will never forget this night as long as I live, Esperanza, Adelita said. Gracias, thank you. If you ever need me, mijita, my little daughter, just call my name and somehow I will hear you, Esperanza told her. The next day, all Doña Micaela and her two daughters could talk about was the mysterious Cenicienta, who had appeared and then disappeared from the fiesta, just like the fairy tale. They were jealous of her beauty and even more jealous because they knew that Javier had fallen in love with her. I'm glad no one knows who she is, Valentina said. Or where she is, Dulce said. And no zapatilla de cristal, glass slipper, Doña Micaela added. Javier had told everyone that he would not rest until he found his Cenicienta. He is coming to town hoy mismísimo, this very day, Doña Micaela announced. He will stop at each house and look for her. This is a chance to show once more what charms you have, my daughters, so prepare yourselves. Who knows, maybe one of you will make him forget this Cenicienta. Adelita, they screamed, come help us quickly. I'll be right there, Adelita answered. But before she went to Valentina and Dulce, she ran to her attic room and hung her mother's rebozo out the window. Why does Adelita hang her rebozo out the window? What do you think? Do you remember that she wore that rebozo to the fiesta? So why is this important to the story? I think Adelita is hoping that Javier will remember her rebozo when he comes to the house. So that's probably why she hangs it out the window. But let's see what happens. She helped the two sisters dress. Then she went back to her room and shyly peeked out the window. Soon, she saw Javier coming down the street on his horse. Suddenly, he saw the rebozo. He jumped down, ran to the door, and knocked. Señora Micaela de la Fortuna opened the door. Ah, Señor Javier, pásele, por favor. Please come in, she said. Señora, where is she? I know my love is here, Javier said. How do you think he knew she was there? Do you mean one of my daughters? Doña Micaela said. Valentina, Dulce, come here. Señor Javier would like to see you. The sisters appeared in the doorway, giggling foolishly. Buen dia, good day, Señor Javier, they chimed in unison. Do you remember us? Are you looking for us? Yes, ladies, I remember you, Javier answered, but it's another that I'm looking for. There's no one else here, Doña Micaela said. Yes, there is, a voice said. Are you looking for me, señor? There was Adelita, standing at the top of the stairs in her mother's dress and rebozo. My Cenicienta, Javier said. What, what's going on? Doña Micaela asked, while Valentina and Dulce looked at Adelita in astonishment. It's only Adelita, Doña Micaela, Adelita said as she came down the stairs. Only Adelita. Who are you? Javier asked. I am Adelita Mercado Martinez. We knew each other when we were children. Oh, Adelita, of course. I remember you as a little girl, Javier gasped. I'm so happy to have found you again, he smiled. I have come to ask my Cenicienta to marry me. Will you? I am an orphan, Senor Javier, Adelita said. Perhaps you should ask Doña Micaela if she will give her permission. Will you, Senora? Javier asked. Why, I don't know what I mean. Well, of course. We shall be honored, Senor Javier, Doña Micaela said. Valentina and Dulce glared at Adelita. Then it will be, Javier said, taking Adelita's hand in his. In her sweetness, Adelita invited Senora Micaela de la Fortuna Mercado and her daughters, Valentina and Dulce, to the wedding. Of course, Esperanza was there too. She was going to take care of Javier and Adelita, just as she had done before. And just like Cenicienta and her prince, we shall live muy felices por siempre, happily ever after, too, Javier said. And they did. And they lived happily ever after. Yay! Hope you enjoyed that story. Ready to get to our thinking job and our bonus? Let's do it. So, like I said, there are a lot of story elements that are the same between the Cinderella story that we read earlier this week and today's story, Adelita, focusing on each story element. So, what characters are the same in all of the stories? In all Cinderella stories, there's a Cinderella character. There's a mean stepmother and stepsisters. There's some kind of magical helper, and there's a man or a prince. So let's think about our story, Cinderella. The Cinderella character's name was Cinderella. She also had mean stepmother and sisters, and she had a fairy godmother who was her magical helper to help her get to the ball. And in that story, there was a prince. So what characters are there in Adelita? That's your job today to write down. Who's the Cinderella character? Who's the magical helper in Adelita? Write down all of those characters. Remember, the setting is a big event. That's the part that's the same. In Cinderella, there was a ball. In Adelita, there was my background should give you a big clue. So you should write down the setting in Adelita. The problems, the family was mean to Cinderella. She couldn't go to the big event, and Cinderella has to leave. If you remember in Cinderella, the family was mean to her. She wasn't allowed to go to the ball because her stepmother said she couldn't. And once her fairy godmother helped her, she did tell her that she has to leave the ball at midnight. So those are some of the problems. So what were similar problems in our story, Adelita? Write those down. The solution. So the Cinderella's family was mean to her. That was solved when Cinderella forgives her family. She couldn't go to the big event. That problem was solved when the magical person helped her. And Cinderella has to leave the ball, but that problem was solved because she kind of leaves something behind so that she can be found. In the Cinderella story, she does forgive her family, even though they were mean to her and laughing at her and when she was trying to try on the glass slipper. The fairy godmother uses magic to help her go to the ball. And the thing that she leaves behind is that glass slipper, which ends up to the prince finding her. Adelita, some of these things are a little bit different, but all of those solutions happen. So write those down. The lesson learned is the same in both stories. We can learn to forgive those who are mean to you and trust the people who help you. So, as you can see, those blanks that are here, that is your work for today. So write down the story elements in Adelita that connect to all of the story elements in Cinderella. just focusing on Adelita for you. Kipsters that do this are really showing off that gold medal, second grade ready work. As always, take that picture, send it to your teachers, and we'll go over the answers together next time. See you later. Adios.